Live. Hello, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order of Ukiah Valley Basin Groundwater Sustainability Agency. As most of you know, it was created by a joint powers agreement to serve as the official groundwater sustainability agency for the Ukiah Valley Basin, required by the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act of 2014. So, clerk, can we conduct roll call, please?
Yes, Director Brown.
Here.
That you would be Chair Brown. Director Brown?
Here.
Oh.
Director Crane?
Present.
Director Cardoza?
Present.
Director White?
Here.
Chair Brown.
Here again. I'll have to remember that.
It's going to happen at least one more time.
Too funny. I'd like to ask Mr. Frost Polly to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you, Mr. Polly. Okay, our first item is consent items, and it's to approve the minutes from the May 10th, 2017 regular meeting. Directors?
Have a small correction, I think, on number 5. It indicates Director Jerry White, so it would be either Jerry Cardozo or Al White. I'm not sure which.
Well, thank you. That was a good catch. I didn't catch that one.
Looking at the packet.
The minutes.
I can see that. I know.
So, Sarah, do you have that? All righty. Thank you so much. So we're going to get to our action items, and this is a notice public.
Approve the minutes?
Oh, sorry about that.
Yeah.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second, with corrections?
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion carried. And we'll get that correction done. Okay. So next is the notice public hearing to receive public comment on Ukiah Valley Basin Groundwater Sustainability Agency's election to act as the Groundwater Sustainability Agency for Ukiah Valley Basin. And let's see. I need to ask first if public notice has been given.
Yes, it has.
All righty. Then we are going to start in with the public hearing. It is open, and were there any correspondence or telephone calls received?
No.
Okay. So we'll begin with the staff presentation.
Hello, good afternoon. Sarah Duquette, Mendocino County. Before you is an agenda summary and of packet. So this is a notice public hearing. Part of the packet consists of the resolution, which is your official document to elect to become a groundwater sustainability agency. There's also a requirement for DWR to register on an online portal and fill out a questionnaire. So the second item in your report is the questionnaire. It asks a lot of background details, and I can quickly kind of go over that. Description of your basin, types of maps that you want, documents that are required to submit. So we're going to go over some of them that we actually have before you. So we do have a map and service area boundaries. So the DWR makes you submit a map. It has the boundaries of the agency that was adopted in the JPA agreement, and then it also has the service areas of the various agencies that are a member. I just want to note there is, if you look at the map that's included in your packet, we do have the City of Ukiah, the County of Mendocino, Upper Russian River Water Agency, the Russian River Flood Control District, and the actual Ukiah Valley Groundwater Basin. There is, I just want to note the adjustment for Upper Russian River Water Agency because the agency is representing only some of your members and not Russian River Flood Control. We did not reflect the flood control in the description. So flood control is expressed separately, so I just wanted to make sure that that was clear.
Correct.
In addition to that, there's a list of stakeholders we need to submit. So you'll see the Ukiah Valley Basin, list of beneficial uses and users of groundwater. We have agricultural, domestic, commercial, municipal, public water. So it's a pretty comprehensive list of the various users in the basin, and also a description about our formation process, our types of seat on the board, our plan to continue to engage in the public and offer opportunities for input. And those are the 4 major items before you.
Okay, directors, any questions of staff?
Not at this time.
Okay, we're going to move forward then with public comment. So anyone that would like to speak should come up to the mic and introduce yourself and state your name for the record, what agency or entity or just from the public you might be representing. You'll have 3 minutes so that everyone can be heard today, and please don't repeat what others may say. So, public comment is open. Please come forward. That's easy.
We're still new.
Then we'll take it back to the board, and we'll have staff with final remarks or comments.
I just want to note on the second page of the resolution, it goes over kind of next steps, that the agency does elect to become a GSA, that within 30 days of the date of this resolution being signed, we will file with the state. The resolution will take immediate effect. So after this meeting, on behalf of the agency, the county will move forward and submit all the information online, and we'll notify all of the board members when that happens. And it is an online portal, so it will be open to not just us, but everyone in California.
Wonderful. Directors, do you have any questions of staff? Seeing none, we do have a recommended action on our agenda summary with 2 components.
I will move that we adopt the resolution electing the agency to become the Groundwater Sustainability Agency for the Ukiah Valley Basin, and to authorize the County of Mendocino on behalf of the agency to provide notice to the Department of Water Resources of the agency's election to be the GSA for the Ukiah Valley Basin.
I'll second.
Okay, and I will close the public hearing. Should have done that before I asked for a motion, just missed a step. Okay, we have a motion by Director White, a second by Director Cardoza, and that is the recommended action. Is there any public comment to the motion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. And could we have a roll call oral vote, please?
Director Brown?
Aye.
Director Crane?
Aye.
Director Cardoza?
Aye.
Director White?
Aye.
Chair Brown?
Aye. All righty, here we go. Next item on our agenda is discussion and possible action to adopt an appointment process for the agricultural seat. We need to review the proposed process for appointment of the seat itself.
Sarah Duquette, Mendocino County. So before you, I just want to go over the requirements in the JPA agreement to select the stakeholder directors. It allows you to identify a process and move forward with that process before the bylaws. So we've been working with the Farm Bureau on identifying the process. So I'd like to, at this time, allow a representative from the Farm Bureau come forward and kind of describe the draft process before you. You'll see both a process and the actual application or information form.
Mendocino County Farm Bureau. So yes, in within the joint powers agreement that are described in the summary for today's topic. And then we have been and are continuing to solicit individuals that meet the qualifications within the agricultural community within the basin. We are well ahead of that. We just haven't had a process to move forward with in order to submit those names to you. And thank you to Sarah and to this board for creating the website and the email. We do have that available, so now we know where to submit this prior to next month's meeting. So getting into the actual nomination form itself, again, this would be the document that we provide to those applicants who were interested in being nominated. And so the first section obviously is taken right out of the GSA JPA document to reiterate the qualifications. And so based on that, we go through and sort of put together a checklist. You know, are you a resident? That's one of the requirements. Yes, no. And goes through the rest of those requirements. You note that there is a footnote there down at the bottom. If for some reason we really don't know the individual, we're not assuming that would be the case, but if there's something that we would need to question, or if there's a request for additional documentation from this board, we could go to have that attached in order to provide that to you. So obviously following through onto the next page, simply the contact information for the applicant, their signature, and then our section there from Mendocino County Farm Bureau for our review process, just to verify, to go back through the document, to sign off on it, and therefore, you know, a date that it was submitted back to the GSA. So we were trying to keep it fairly simplistic as possible so that individuals wouldn't be overloaded. But if there is a need, we could provide additional information. Are there any questions?
Well, I like that on page 3 with the certification. And I think we've gone over this, and I know I'm satisfied. Directors?
It's fine with me.
I like it.
Yeah, it's a good form, covers everything that they were supposed to cover on their form.
I want to thank you for your work. Is there any public comment? Please come forward. Seeing no one coming forward, it is back to the board.
Move the recommended action.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All righty. I'd like another roll call vote, please.
Director Brown?
Aye.
Director Crane?
Aye.
Director Cardoza?
Aye.
Director White?
Aye.
Chair Brown?
Aye. All right. The next item is C, and that is discussion and possible action, including adoption of the 2017 Board of Directors Master Meeting Calendar. Directors.
Looks fine to me.
Great. Staff, do you have something to present?
Just a quick note on the background. The last meeting, there was consensus of the board to have the meetings held on the second Thursday of the month at 1:30 p.m. in the Mendocino County Board of Supervisors chambers. So the calendar attached is based on that direction, and it is through the rest of this calendar year.
Correct. And then we did talk about transitioning to quarterly meetings.
Move the recommended action.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We do have a motion on the floor, but is there any public comment? Oh, you're so well behaved today. I'm teasing. Okay, bring it back to the board. Roll call vote, please.
Director Brown?
Aye.
Director Crane?
Aye.
Director Cardoza?
Aye.
Director White?
Aye.
Chair Brown?
Aye. All right. Next item, D, discussion and possible action regarding the development of bylaws and conflict of interest code. Staff, would you like to do a summary on that, please?
Sure. So Section 18.3 of the JPA requires that the board approve bylaws, and Section 8.4 requires you to adopt a local conflict of interest code. So before you, we have a couple examples based on the direction from the last meeting. It was a little challenging to find some examples of completed bylaws for GSA, since a lot of us are pretty much at the same point, but I was able to find some. So we have two examples. The first one is Tehama County Groundwater Sustainability Groundwater Commission. They're slightly different, as in they kind of act more as the first board that hears the items, and then they provide recommendations to a flood control district who has the final decision. But they do have bylaws, and there are good components of it that we could potentially use in ours. Then there's the West Turlock Sub-Basin Groundwater Sustainability Agency bylaws, and these are pretty far along. And I think that there's a lot to review in terms of a good start. We will have to customize certain areas because we have very specific requirements, but a lot of them are a good basis and good examples to look at moving forward. There's also some information on the local conflict of interest code. So before you actually have the state statute governing the development of the conflict of interest code. And two examples. We have the Mendocino County Conflict of Interest Code and the Mendocino County Tourism Commission Conflict of Interest Code. And so those ones are slightly more straightforward. There are some things that you will need to include in the Conflict of Interest Code that's going to be specific to this agency, but the template's there of what we need to supply to the state.
Okay, and I do have one question on the recommended action. It says 3 committees, but I only see 2. So is it only 2?
It's only 2, sorry.
Okay.
Saw that too.
Directors, when I went over these, I actually liked the West Turlock. Pretty comprehensive, but we would have to customize, as Ms. Duquette stated, to meet our specific needs. But I felt that it was something we could at least use as a template and then customize it to our own needs.
Sounds like a sound idea.
Director Crane.
I would volunteer to serve on Conflict of Interest Code Committee.
Okay. Do I have any other volunteers?
I will volunteer.
Oh,
Pinch poke?
Shall we combine the committees, or shall we make them 2?
Combine would be good,
yeah, let's
as
combine
long as
them.
there's not a conflict of
Right.
interest.
Then why don't we do it all of us in this setting,
You'll,
separate meetings?
Rather than have separate meetings, call a special meeting maybe, rather than a monthly? How soon do we have to have our bylaws in order? And conflict of
it's
interest
as
code?
soon as practical for the bylaws. The conflict of interest code
Is in state law.
is in state law. I would have to double check the JPA agreement on the timeline. I think it's also as soon as possible. The one that does have a timeline is the budget, and we'll get to that in the next item. There's a finite amount of time to adopt that. But if you are going to have private meetings, the Brown Act will apply, so you'd want to only meet in groups of 2.
That's why I say, if we're going to combine these, then why don't we do it collectively in the public eye?
So we would have, at our next meeting in July, we would have a working board meeting.
Right.
Okay. Does
So
that-
I have some comments on this.
Sure.
One of my primary goals is to have things remain simple. And on the conflict of interest statement, the samples we have are for large organizations. This is not that. We have, a flood control district has a conflict of interest code that's 1 page long. I don't know that we need more than that. I don't know that we need to get heavily involved in creating something. We'd simply have to meet the basic requirements of the law. And so, on the conflict of interest thing, I think we don't want to start out with complexity and try and rework that. On the other side, the bylaws, I know that we, in the formation of the JPA, there were issues that were not resolved, And the way that we were able to form the agency was to say, well, these issues will be resolved in the bylaws. And so, yes, there is more work to do there. I think it's important to go back to that document, pick out the issues that were unresolved and address them, and try to build out on that, as opposed to, again, taking something that these bylaws that we see samples of, again, are for more complicated things. I did find the table of contents for the West Turlock Subbasin to be sort of a list of all the things that you might want to have in your bylaws. We probably have most of that already, and the areas that are unresolved could be resolved and then brought in the form of a bylaw. I also think that it would be important for the people that worked on that initially to be the people that carry it forward. I think that's what I have to say on the subject.
And what you meant was that worked on the JPA?
Yeah, there was a certain group of people that kind of worked on that, and I think it's basically staff of the organizations that are represented here. And I think they should get back together and work on those areas of unresolved topics.
Okay. So we have a couple of options before us. Director Brown, Cardoza, do you have any preference?
I concur with Director White. I'd like to see all of this as simple, start out as simple as possible.
Director Crane.
In the case of conflict of interest, if any of us have a document that we prefer, if we submit it to staff so that they circulate it to all of us prior to the next meeting, I think that would be appropriate.
Individual documents?
Yes. If you're aware of one that you think has merit, that you would like to emulate, if you submit it so that we can all share in its review and discussion. If I have one, for instance, I think it's prudent for me to take a look at the cities and compare it. I agree that everything we do, I think it's better to keep it as simple as we reasonably can. In the matter of bylaws, your remarks, Mr. White, were the sort of thing that would be direction to staff. I think it's important that if any of the rest of us have similar remarks to the same end or a different end, that we speak to those so that staff has some guidance as to what we're thinking.
I agree. I agree with what he said.
Okay.
I think it's a fine idea. I just kind of want to clarify what you're asking is for all of us to bring these documents in and then build from that document? Or are we just each individually going to work from our own conflict of interest document?
I think we work from it. We listen to each other about why we like a particular thing better than something else, and we work out.
So we're building a document from the input?
With.
Okay, so I just want a clarification.
That's what I think is appropriate.
Yeah, I would prefer that we really let the staff work on the documents with the understanding that our objective is to have it be simple and meet the minimum requirements. And if they can do that, then we can review that and see if that satisfies our concerns, if we have any. And if we have some, then we can express them at that time. But I guess what I'm saying is I don't want to be trying to do this. What I want to be doing is looking at something that
Is almost finalized.
is done.
A draft, yes.
Yeah, that you can say, yes, that's just what I was looking for,
Okay.
or, I'm uncomfortable with this or that aspect of it. And I think it'll go much quicker that way. I think we can get past this sort of housekeeping portion and get to what's really important, which is the plan that we have to develop.
Correct.
I agree. I think that it would be a simpler approach rather than having 5 different documents or more.
Right, we'll go to public comment on this particular agenda item. Anyone that would like to speak to it, please come forward. State your name for the record.
Devin Jones, Mendocino County Farm Bureau. Thank you for the simplistic comment. I think that is a good idea to move forward with. I may have the time somewhere to help with the bylaws committee if necessary, so I would volunteer to assist if necessary. Thank you.
Okay, and you participated before on the JPA, correct? Okay. Any others that participated in the writing of the JPA and the language that would like to be part of the grouping to work on the bylaws and conflict of interest? Please come forward and state your ability to do so, so we can get it into the record and staff knows who the contact should be.
Tamara Alanis, Russian River Flood Control. I'd be happy to help with the bylaws and conflict of interest group.
Okay, thank you. Okay. I think that may be it. All righty. So our action on this is not to take action, but to have a working group work on the bylaws and conflict of interest and bring it back at the next meeting. If anyone has documents, as stated by Director Crane, that he'd like to take a look at the City of Ukiah's conflict of interest. If you have that, if you could please get it into, email it into our email address so it could be on hand when this group meets. And perhaps if it works for me and their timelines, if no one minds, I think I'll dive into that and be a part of the group. Is that okay? Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Yeah. All righty. So we're going to move on to the next item, and this will be item E, discussion and possible action regarding a proposed budget for 2017-18. Staff, would you like to do the summary presentation?
Sure. Sarah Duquette, Mendocino County. Section 15.1 requires within 90 days after the first meeting of the governing board of the agency, which will be August 7th, 2017, that and prior to each fiscal year, the board of directors needs to adopt an annual budget. So we started out by, so in the JPA agreement, the initial agency will be funded by equal contributions of the initial members. So that's the Upper Russian River Water Agency, Flood Control, the City of Ukiah, and the County of Mendocino. We developed this budget based on discussion during the formation process that it would be about $5,000 per agency to start the GSA. So that's kind of what we based the budget off of. So I'll start about going over the budget, and then I'll go over the actual treasurer controller functions that were designated to the county in the JPA agreement. So you have an attached proposed budget, and we tried to build in unexpected expenses because right now we don't really know what this fiscal year really holds. So we made an assumption that it would be $5,000 from each initial agency, so we would have $20,000. We have administrative services, and we have the annual audit, which will be covered by the county. It will be the way we plan to administer the trust account, which I'll get to later, the cost will be covered. If you'd like to have a video technician at each one of the meetings to record it and have it live streamed and on YouTube for the public, we did our projections that we would have between 10 and 12 meetings because it's unsure at what point we'll be transitioning to quarterly meetings. We also have support built in, both clerk support and analyst support in terms of records management, publications, putting together agenda, research, kind of special projects from there. Under services and supplies, we budgeted for some communication, so if we have any other public noticing or anything like that which would incur costs, we can cover that. We have money built in, $850 for supplies and mail. We also have $4,000 budgeted for professional services, and we can use that for both clerking and for legal services. We do have a potential clerk that we could bring in to do all of the clerking and minutes, which would help decrease our cost of overall agency. So we kind of built some into professional services. And just to be safe, we figure we may use legal services at some point, or if one of the agencies offered up their legal counsel, we could potentially reimburse them. So we built in a little bit of money there. We reserved $1,000 for special department expense, just of if something comes up and we need to move forward on unexpected items. We have that built in. Right now, we don't have any equipment or fixed assets. We don't have any payments to other government entities. It comes to about $13,000. I don't think that will meet that amount of money because we did just put in a lot of padding because we just are unsure about what's the future. Based on the budget and cost, I think that the $20,000 can get us through 2 fiscal years. I'm thinking about $10,000 for each year and maybe less, depending on how many meetings you have, the sizes of your agenda, if you're, how far along we get into the study. So that's the proposed budget. And I don't know if you have any questions, comments, figures you want to see put in, reduced.
So, directors, questions of staff with the proposed budget?
I like it as a 2-year project.
Yeah, me too. The only question I have when we talk about clerking in the minutes, will there be, or do we need to have a formal application process? Did you ask that question of county staff?
So I can address that when we talk about budget administration of how we would propose handling contracts. And I can just dive into that really quick right now, unless you guys have questions on specific line items of the budget. So in the JPA agreement, the county is listed as the treasurer controller. So I met with our assistant CEO, Alan Flora. I also met with our auditor controller for the county, how we can administer this at a cost-effective way. So talking to the auditor, he recommends for fiscal oversight that the county develop a trust account, and all of the payments from the different organizations will be put into the trust account. And then the Mendocino County Water Agency will be in charge of the agency administration. And so through the agency administration, we charge the trust account. So if we, have a clerk's time putting together an agenda or the video technician, we line item and bill that trust account, and then we create quarterly reports. And the quarterly reports are what you reviewed. By doing the administration through the water agency's budget, then it's a part of the overall County of Mendocino's annual independent audit, and it's no extra cost to do an audit because the water agency itself can cover it, and it's we call it A87 costs in terms of the cost that each agency is charged for administration. So if we did it that way, the water agency will build it into their budget of administration costs, and it will be charged back to the trust account, and all of that will be documented, and quarterly reports will come to you to look at the charges. We would also be able to utilize our contracting services. So we have a boilerplate for the county in a way that we do contracts, from putting together the contract, legal review, and managing those contracts. So we would suggest that we can utilize that and just use the county's contracts. They would still come to you for approval. It would just be our boilerplate and reviewed by our legal counsel, so that could kind of reduce any cost that could be extra in terms of creating a new agency from scratch. So that's kind of our proposal, is to put together a trust account, and that's where all of the money will be held. And then we'll have documentation of what's charged, and then you can review those quarterly reports, and then it's included in the county's annual independent audit. And then what we would want to do is kind of reflect that in the bylaws. So in terms of the contract process and all of that stuff, so it's in the bylaws, and it's pretty straightforward what's the expectations between the relationship of the county and the relationship with the agency.
Two questions. One, I don't see a cost for an audit within our budget.
It's because it's included. We would be administrating it through the Mendocino County Water Agency. So we already have a general, it's
Audit anyway.
Yeah.
So it's also a requirement that any annual review or annual audit be sent in to the controller, state controller. So that would be taken care of as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Move the 3 recommended items, move the recommended actions.
I'll second it.
We have a motion to move the 3 recommended items, and a second by Director White. Director Crane made the motion. We'll go to public comment. Anyone from the public want to speak to this?
Elizabeth Salamone. Sarah, I was wondering so is there a line item for the Mendocino County Water Agency within this budget that I'm not seeing?
So this is the actual budget for the Ukiah Valley GSA. This isn't the actual water agency's budget. So if you approve the budget in July, then what we would do is our first quarter for our actual county budget, we reflect that change in our first quarter report, that the Mendocino County Water Agency is now the administrator for this trust account. And this is the trust account, so this would be the budget you adopt, and we would reflect that change in the county's actual budget unit 0326, in case you want to look at our budget online. And then this is what the trust account charges will be based off of.
Right. So is there any money going from this entity to the water agency?
Yeah, the administrative services, the video technician, the clerk for the records management, publications, and agenda would be the county, and the analyst. For additional clerking services, for actual clerking of the meeting and minutes, would be under the professional services line item. That's where we would pay that.
So the DCOB and the analyst are going to that's county.
For support staff.
Okay. So in that is incorporated the A87 costs because it's going through the county water agency. Okay. And you mentioned legal here under professional services. Legal services, what are you recommending for legal services? Only using the county?
It's really up to the board. There's a couple ways you could do it. You could go out for your own private legal services for a local attorney. You can ask the county to do in-kind to handle the legal costs, then we could get numbers of what the cost would be based on a certain amount of hours for you. Or if there's another agency that's a member here that would like to either offer in-kind services or have some type of reimbursement in terms of legal services, we could talk about that. But there's about 3 different ways you could go.
We do need you to put your name into the record.
Did I not say it loudly enough? Elizabeth Salamone.
Okay.
So that could be the direction of how you want to go forward with legal services. When we get we'll cover the legal services for contract review because that will just be a part of our process in terms of managing contracts. But there will probably be a point where you'll need legal review, whether it's your groundwater sustainability plan or other things that come up. So if we don't address it here, we can kind of take it as things come. And we do have, like I said, money built in there, and then that extra $1,000 of reserve.
Okay. Thank you, Beth. Anyone else? Please come forward. Seeing no one, but I want to ask the directors in our motion on recommended action on item number 2, and as staff presented, that is the direction that we want to take. Is that correct? Because it is to...
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to also comment that the audit, having it be handled that way as opposed to having an independent auditor, I know that the Upper Russian is looking at having to have an audit, which will cost more than our entire
Budget.
So I'm happy to have a way around that.
Well, in LAFCO, and actually there are ways around it in state code. I wouldn't say ways around it, but we found this out through LAFCO. I won't go into all the detail, but we have a number of districts, especially our cemetery districts, that will have to save money every single year just to do a final audit. And they do have, at least most of them have financial reviews and follow through with turning their documentation into the state controller. But there is state code that LAFCO staff found for the LAFCO board where there are some actions you can take.
Good. We'll find out what those are then.
Yes, I will share the code. I've got it sitting on my desk in my office.
Great.
I'll get it. Actually, it was on the Board of Supervisors agenda, probably our last meeting, consent calendar, because Mendocino Little River Cemetery. So if you want to look it up there, but what I can do is get it scanned and sent to Tamara and Bill.
Great.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. Staff?
Just an item of clarity for the recommended. The first one is to direct initial members to seek authorization from their respected governing boards to contribute $5,000 towards the agency's operational cost, and then we can solidify that in the bylaws. But when that point comes, or if you already have authorization, if you could just notify us, and we would then take this proposed budget and bring it back to you for adoption in July.
Okay. So the notification, as each director takes it back to their agency, proof of action should be coming to you.
To me or the UVB GSA email. Either way is fine.
Oh, okay. All right. Anyone else? Okay, we do have a motion by Director Crane. I think you made that motion. And a second by Director White. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Director Brown?
Aye.
Director Crane?
Aye.
Director Cardoza?
Aye.
Director White?
Aye.
Chair Brown?
Yes. Okay. So you all have upcoming meetings. Would it be possible to have that on your agenda and be back by prior to our next meeting so we know what we have to work with? Okay. All righty. Now we're up to directors' reports. Directors?
Nothing to report.
Nothing.
I do have some questions. Main question is, for our advisory group, I've had a request to join it by someone that I think would bring a lot of experience and knowledge to the table, and that would be the executive director of the California Land Stewardship Institute, Laurel Marcus, asked if she could join the advisory committee. So what do,
Agenda for the next meeting.
okay, then we will.
Yeah, she would be a real asset.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So there is a, with our advisory group, I hope we have others that will do that. Do you have comment?
Yes, and somewhat related, the county is moving along on our grant for the initial work for the groundwater sustainability. So I wanted to see if you would like a presentation, either in July or August, about the progress of the grant and the information we've been able to gather.
Oh, I think the sooner the better. Okay.
Yeah.
Appears everyone's agreeing, so yes, let's have that on our next agenda. Okay, we're going to move forward with public comment. Anyone that would like to make public comment, please come forward. I sure don't see anybody. Wow. This is a quick meeting.
We'll be savoring these one day.
Watch out for next month. Any other items for the agenda, directors? Do you have anything? Okay, appears not. Thank you, everyone.
We are adjourned.
Meeting adjourned.